My name is Gabrielle Lewis, and this is my presentation on ARPANET and the birth of online networks for American history too. In today's world, everything is connected. We are able to easily communicate with other people through text messaging, social media, even by holding live video conferences. Not only can we communicate with other people through networks, but our devices can share instructions and data with other devices. For example, this person has a fitness tracker, either a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, that shares personal information with both the person and a linked device. A long time ago, the ability to share this kind of data was unimaginable, and there were no online networks that we think of today. So through these next few slides, we will take a look at how ARPA formed their own network in the 1960s, why they formed it, and how it has impacted the future of computers, networks, and communication. ARPA was originally established during the height of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was a huge world power at the time, and they had just launched a satellite into space called Sputnik. The U.S. government, in response, wanted a computer network that would keep the U.S. ahead of its military rivals by pursuing research through scientific advances in defense-related fields. Robert Taylor, who's pictured here, was the director of ARPA's Info Process Tech Office, and he was the one to come up with the idea of ARPANET. Taylor had 3 different terminals hooked up to 3 different mainframe computers in his office, and so he asked himself, why can't one terminal be used for any computer? So at this point we don't quite have ARPANET yet, just ARPA, but the main idea, that seed, has now been planted. What were some of the first computers like? They took up a whole room, they were expensive and highly fault-prone, they used vacuum tubes instead of transistors, and these were made of glass, were very easily broken, and got very hot. In this first picture up here you can see a huge computer, lots of terminals, all taking up one giant warehouse. And in this picture, a woman sits by a computer terminal and makes switches to the frame to input a program. The first computers were only used in government buildings such as universities and military installations. Several universities in the late 50s started experimenting with time-sharing computers, which were able to help more students at one time. Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or MIT, was actually the first university to utilize the compatible time-sharing system. Going back to networks, where did the word come from? A 1550s definition explains it as a net-like arrangement of threads, wires, etc. But beginning in the late 1800s to the early 1900s, the word network is used in the regular jargon of railroad, telegraph, and radio professions, terms more familiar to us. For example, NBC, the radio station, NBC, the National Broadcasting Corporation, split into 2 separate affiliates. The Red Network, which was NBC, and the Blue Network, which later became the American Broadcasting Corporation, or ABC. Both radio stations later became television broadcasting networks. So fast forward to 1966, ARPANET is in its early development stage between the University of California, Los Angeles, and the Stanford Research Institute. What's making it so phenomenal is that up until this point, networks were only capable of connecting a few computers made by the same manufacturer within a small region. But ARPANET connected many different kinds of computers that span different universities across the United States. On October 29, 1969, a University of California, Los Angeles student named Charlie Klein, who's pictured right here, tried to log into the mainframe at Stanford's Research Institute. He managed to type in the letters L and O, the word login, but it crashed when he typed the letter G. This was received over at Stanford Research Institute, and Klein ended up sending the very first message over ARPANET. So now it was possible that 2 mainframe computers could communicate to each other from thousands of miles away, and two more universities, University of California, Santa Barbara, and the Utah School of Computing, joined ARPANET in December of 1969. But now, was it possible that a computer could communicate to another electronic device that wasn't a computer? In 1970, members of the Carnegie Mellon University Computer Science Department created microswitches to put inside a vending machine, like this one up here, to sense how many Cokes were left inside. Students and faculty could ping the computer for information about the availability, and because CMU was part of ARPANET, other universities across the U.S. could access info on the vending machine by using the command fingercoke at CMUA, pictured here. That was in 1970. Another development during the 70s was private and public networks. For example, the IBM American Airlines Sabre system is a private network. It supplied a reservation service to its own sales offices and travel agents, which were lines leased from AT&T. So up in this picture, you can see is at an airport, American Airlines and IBM using their Sabre system to supply information to their sales offices and travel agents. And they had their own private network. It was theirs, and they supplied the information, their own information to their sales offices and their travel agents. There were also public online services, but they were not as popular because they struggled with serving thousands of users, and they were very expensive. By 1983, ARPANET had divided into two networks, one for civilian use and one for military use, and it was the combination of the two networks that was first referred to as the Internet. In 1986, National Science Foundation's NSF-Net went online to connected supercomputer centers at 56,000 bits per second, the speed of a dial-up modem like this one. It was really hard for ARPANET, which had been designed for sharing research across a large network, to continue to survive when NSF-Net was newer, faster, and performed the same job as better. Here is their logo. ARPANET was shut down in 1989. It is difficult to tell from this picture, but in early 1989, it was still being used at several universities, still communicating. It's just that there were better alternatives out now, and they made the decision to pull the plug on ARPANET later that year, and it was finally decommissioned in 1990. We're now in the 1990s, ARPANET is gone, and now we have this guy, Tim Berners-Lee, a scientist, developed hypertext markup language, or HTML, which became the structure for web browsers, web servers, and web pages. People began using commercial dial-up services such as CompuServe, AOL, and Prodigy. The biggest difference is that now, instead of cumbersome, expensive mainframes that only were used in government schools and the military, we now have personal computers that are mass-produced, less expensive, smaller, faster, and now there are more personal networks, including AT&T and Sprint. So here is a trial disk for America Online, 500 hours free. And then here is the startup page for CompuServe. You can click one of these buttons down here, it'll take you to news, you can send messages to people, and this button in the middle will connect you to the internet. Today, networking has changed life around the world in many ways. And although ARPANET has been around in over 30 years, its core values are still being used today. When someone is using a Mac, and they share files with another person on a PC, they are using technology that was first developed during ARPANET's development. Also, we are now on 5th generation 5G networking, which includes massive Internet of Things, These are smart devices, similar to the first ping of the vending machine in the 1970s at Carnegie Mellon University. And nowadays there are multiple social platforms to choose from, so that content can be shared locally or around the world. Facebook, Pinterest, Snapchat, Instagram, YouTube. So even though ARPANET doesn't physically exist anymore, it has majorly influenced not only technology, but also networking as a whole, and it will continue to do so with what will come in the future. To wrap it all up, here is a 3-minute clip from a video taken on May 9th, 1963 at MIT. For sake of time, I won't show the whole thing. It's almost 30 minutes long, but I highly encourage watching the whole video when you have time. It is about time sharing and how MIT hopes to fully utilize it to be able to help multiple students at once someday.
Then the computation center at MIT was
Alright, here are the sources for my presentation if you would like to learn more. And thank you for watching my presentation on ARPANET and the birth of online networks.